The New York Jets are making multiple moves and some massive updates that will have huge implications on their free agency, their NFL draft, and ultimately the next NFL season, as the Jets offense is getting a major shakeup, and we are going to break all of this down. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jets Digest. It's Chris here. And guys, if you're enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe. This is the place to be for all Jets content with the offseason coming up. We have multiple videos, 2 to 3 videos every single day. You guys do not want to miss out on a bunch of fun content, some TikToks, some Reels, some live streams. You don't want to miss out. But let's jump into the video because we have a lot to talk about. Darren Mougey is being active as he's taken over for the New York Jets GM role and has not been slow about making multiple moves with the New York Jets. The Jets now, they're in a situation where they obviously want to try to rebuild, but at the same time as they rebuild, they want to instill a winning culture. So they're not exactly trying to lose games, but they are kind of trying to lose games anyway and really just build a winning culture around a team that is going to probably drop a couple of games with a much younger team surrounding them as they go back into things and try to reset this roster after the Aaron Rodgers experiment. Now, we know Aaron Rodgers will not be returning to the New York Jets. That came out a while ago, and now we have 2 other reports with guys who are connected to Aaron Rodgers, as you saw in the thumbnail in the intro video. As Adam Schefter revealed, the New York Jets have given permission to veteran wide receiver Allen Lazard to seek a trade. Also, the Jets are open to bringing him back to the team, which is pretty surprising to think about. However, Rich Cimini mentioned that Lazard counts for $13.2 million on the cap. They get $6.6 million in cap relief by cutting him, which Cimini says is the likely outcome here. So there's a few different reports here on Allen Lazard. The Jets, apparently, according to Schefter, the NFL insider, does believe that there's a very good chance the Jets could end up bringing Lazard back. They're not adamant about getting him off the roster. They see him as a good veteran who brings stability to the wide receiver room, especially for a New York Jets team that does not have a lot going for them when it comes to their wide receivers. I mean, obviously they have Garrett Wilson, who's the number 1 option, and outside of that, you have younger guys, but it's nothing really too special for the New York Jets. I mean, Malachi Corley hasn't really shown anything yet, and outside of that, there's just really not much to really be thrilled about with this wide receiver room. Xavier Gipson's more of a utility guy than anything else, who's there for kick returns. So it really does leave the Jets in an interesting spot. I mean, you want Garrett Wilson to not be the one receiver there who's a legit option, because if he is, what that causes is a New York Jets team that then kind of is going to struggle with getting the ball to Garrett Wilson, because teams are just going to be draped all over him, not trusting anyone else to really be a real volume player. So it does help that if they decide to keep around Allen Lazard, they do have a guy who is capable of being a good veteran to have around the team, which the Jets are interested in doing. We've seen that already with the Jets and keeping Tyrod Taylor around, and now they want to keep, or they now are open to keeping Lazard around. However, Lazard is going to look for a trade, try to get to a better situation where he could try to win. Lazard is not here for... He's not here to just play on the New York Jets. He'd rather be on a winning team, as we all know. So with that being the case for Allen Lazard, it just makes some sense that he would want to request a trade, or not even, well, he did sort of request a trade, but he's more just looking for one to try to find a better situation for himself, where now, later into his NFL career, he can try to win games. Now, Lazard, last season, he played much better than his first season in the New York Jets. He played 12 games, had 37 receptions, 530 yards, 14.3 yards per reception with 6 touchdowns. The man played a very solid brand of football last year as a potentially wide receiver 2 or 3. On top of that, though, almost all of his production came from last season, as in his 2 years with the Jets, he's had 60 catches, 841 yards, and 7 touchdowns in the 26 games that he's played for the New York Jets now. So that's all but 1 touchdown was this year. On top of that, he had 60 catches last year, or he had 60 catches in total. He had 37 this year, and 841 yards over his total time with the Jets, and 530 of them were here. So obviously, a year with 300 yards and 1 touchdown and less than 20 or around 20 receptions, just not very good at all. So Lazard did find his way back with Aaron Rodgers quarterbacking the team instead of a mix of Zach Wilson and Mike White and Trevor Siemian. So now the Jets, they're interested in keeping Lazard around, but mind you, it's unclear who the Jets quarterback is going to be. It's important to note that one of Lazard's touchdowns this year was caught from a pass by Tyrod Taylor. So obviously Taylor could get the ball to Lazard, and Lazard showed something there. And in fairness, Tyrod Taylor is better than Zach Wilson and Trevor Siemian and Mike White, so that makes some sense. But honestly, at the same time, it still does leave you in a weird situation where you don't know who the Jets quarterback is going to be and if Allen Lazard is going to be able to work with them, as we've seen. if the quarterback's underwhelming, the New York Jets wide receiver over the last 2 years has struggled. So it's important to note that. But on top of that, there's just a lot more to talk about with Lazard, specifically his contract. And the fact that, well, it is a fairly big contract, but for a wide receiver, it's pretty normal for a guy like Lazard. It's not an overpay. It looks like one because of the production level over the last 2 years. But this is what wide receivers at that mid-level area go for, so it's not really too surprising to see him getting paid this much. If the Jets do cut him, they'd probably have to find a wide receiver of a similar caliber to Lazard for a similar amount of money anyway, and they'd also still be losing out on some money. They only get that $6 million relief. They don't get all 13 back. So it is kind of this point of, do you really even see a point in cutting Lazard? And if so, why? Who are you going for? What trick do you have up your sleeve that you think you can get for a similar or cheaper or slightly more expensive price that's going to give you much more production than Allen Lazard? So the Jets do have to think about that. But on top of that, as we also know, it's become the end of the road for another Jets wide receiver, as Davante Adams from Tony Pauline said sources from his team say that the Jets informed them that they intend to cut the receiver in the coming days. The Jets will get almost all of the money back on Davante Adams' contract, so no surprise to see him getting cut. The Jets were open to trying to trading Davante Adams, however, it just did not work out for the team. They tried to trade him, but he's on that $36.5 million cap hit, which is just really tough to move, and it's understandable why the New York Jets would not really be able to find a buyer for Davante Adams. Not too many teams can really go for that, and also teams aren't stupid. They understand the Jets at the end of the day are just going to waive him anyway, so they might as well just get him for a much cheaper deal where they don't have to give up literally anything for Davante. So that's what's going to happen there. It is sad to see Davante Adams go. That was the one final hope this year when Davante Adams walked into the screen on Aaron Rodgers' interview at the Pat McAfee show, where it felt like maybe, just maybe, the Jets could turn this thing around, even though they fired their head coach and the vibes are awful. It didn't work out at all. The New York Jets continued to suck. It was a really, really bummer season. We all know that, though, so we don't really have to go over that at all. But Davante Adams, he did his best with the Jets. And, I mean, look, he didn't have a bad year at all. 85 receptions, 1,063 yards, 12.5 yards per reception, 8 touchdowns. The man played fine. He had most of this with the New York Jets. At the end of the year, the Rodgers to Adams connection was as good as ever. It just didn't work out with the Jets. It was too little, too late. The Jets were unable to win games. There was too many bad vibes. They fired their head coach. Just a bunch of stuff that you shouldn't do during an NFL season. But with that contract of Davante, it was obvious the Jets had to move on from him. And maybe if they decide to keep around Aaron Rodgers, they would have reworked both Rodgers' and Adams' contracts to make them on cheaper deals to stick around and try to win. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me the way that the Jets are adamant that they want to win, but also got rid of these two guys and are getting rid of Lazard. However, it's more just them speaking to the media. It's not that Darren Mougey's going to go out there and say, yeah, well, we're not trying to win right now. We're fine with whatever. No, they're going to say they're trying to win, and Aaron Glenn's not a guy who's just going to be cool with letting his teams lose. It's the same Dan Campbell vibe. So, well, it is what it is. And frankly, I do think the Jets are going to have better vibes around them next year. I think the culture will be better. I don't think it's specifically because of Rodgers or Adams or Lazard not being there or some other veterans not being there. I think it's just because who's in the front office, who's coaching the team, that we will see that. But guys, I do want to know what you guys think. Are these the right moves? Let me know in the comments down below. Who should the Jets target? They got literally one wide receiver now who's a valuable player in Garrett Wilson. They need to get other guys around him. I mean, if they draft a quarterback, that quarterback's going to need more than one tool in his toolbox. Sorry. And on top of that, if they take in a veteran or just use someone like a Justin Fields, Fields is going to favor Wilson a lot, and teams are going to be ready for that because of their college connection. So you need other weapons around him. So we're going to see how that goes. We're going to see what the New York Jets do this offseason. We'll keep you updated on everything. So make sure to subscribe to Jets Digest, like this video, turn on post notifications. Have a great day, guys, and go Jets.